Perfect. And I'll check the chat if there's any questions.
Brilliant. Thank you, Matt. Thank you everyone for joining us online. We'll get started. So we're going to be talking about why you might want to consider studying in the UK this afternoon. My name is Nathan Lamb. I'm the Regional Manager for North America and Australasia at the University of Cambridge. And I'm joined today by Alyce Myers, who's the International Officer for North America at Durham University.
No, see Nathan.
Alyce will be joining in a few minutes' time after we've covered a few slides. I'm also joined by Thomas Day, who's International Recruitment Manager at Newcastle University as well. So today's session, we're going to go through why you might want to consider the UK, and then we'll move on to individual university slides. Hopefully there'll also be some time for questions and answers towards the end of today's session as well. So whereabouts in the UK are Durham, Newcastle and Cambridge located? So this is a map of the United Kingdom. All three universities are in England. Two of them are in the northeast of England, being Durham and Newcastle, and Cambridge is in the southeast of England. So starting off with Cambridge, Cambridge is around 50 minutes outside of London. You can get there by train very, very easily. It's only one train to catch. And then Newcastle and Durham are in the northeast of England, and they're around 2.5 to 3 hours north of London as well. Again, you can get there by train, but there's also an international airport in Newcastle itself. So you can catch a connection from Heathrow, the other London airports, and very easy get up to Newcastle. And then from Newcastle, you can get to Durham within around 15 minutes by train. So really easy and well-connected universities. The UK generally is very well connected in terms of transportation. As mentioned, you can fly in very easily, but throughout the UK, there's an extensive train network, and we're actually connected to mainland Europe by train as well. Flying around Europe is quite cheap as well. For example, last year I got a return ticket to Rome, and that was around $30. So it's really easy to get around Europe by air travel too. There's thousands of degree options throughout the UK. So we really do punch in terms of the number of universities that we have, but also the quality of universities and the number of individual degree courses. So we have over 160 universities across the United Kingdom. All of them have a pin on this map here, but we also have higher education and further education colleges listed on this map too, just to give you an idea of the spread of universities. There is quite a dense cluster within London, and then spread out a little bit more as we go further north into Scotland. And there's a huge variety of universities in terms of the structure and location. So we have ancient universities. So if you're interested in having that very quintessentially British university experience with historic university buildings, you could apply to universities that are almost 1,000 years old, that being the University of Oxford. Cambridge is 800 years old, and we have a lot of ancient universities in Scotland as well. We also have modern universities, so a lot of universities were established in the early 90s. But we also have universities that were established in the 1800s and early 1900s as well. In terms of structure, there are a small handful of collegiate universities, Cambridge being one of them, Oxford being another, and Durham being a third example of a collegiate university. And Alyce and I are going to talk a little bit more in detail around what it means to be a collegiate university, but the kind of structure to consider if you're applying to UK universities. We also have campus universities, generally outside of city centre locations, lots of very beautiful locations covered within campus universities. And then we have city centre locations as well. For example, Newcastle University is a city university, and lots of city universities in London, Birmingham, for example, Manchester as well. So metropolitan student experiences in those city centre campuses. And the UK really is very well known for high quality education. Just to give you an example, 1 in 4 world leaders at some point of their lives have been educated in the UK, either in high school or into the university level as well. And 4 universities are in the world top 10, and many UK universities in the world top 100 as well. It really is research-led education. So teachers, professors, lecturers in UK universities are not only teaching students, but they're doing their own research as well. So they're generally world-leading experts in their field. Often they will be advising media and government, NGOs, and they really are developing new knowledge and working at the cutting edge of their field. We focus heavily on specialization and in-depth study in the UK. So the US university system is very, very good for that liberal arts, broad education system, whereas in the UK, we focus more on a specific discipline area. So if you're thinking of coming to the UK, it's a really good option if you're finding that you're most interested in a specific sub-discipline area within your subject. Because you really will specialize in depth once you get to the UK. And you'll develop transferable skills. So a lot of your time throughout your postgraduate degree will be your own to decide how you spend that time. So although you will have contact hours, depending on whether you do a taught degree or a research degree, the number of hours you spend in workshops, labs, seminars, lectures really will depend on the type of degree that you apply to. But even so, even if you have a contact heavy degree, you will still have a lot of time that is your own. So you will develop those transferable skills through devising how you spend that time. Once you graduate, there's also the option for you to remain in the UK. At the moment, if you graduate from a master's degree in the UK, you can apply for the graduate route visa, which would allow you to remain in the UK for up to 2 years. If you graduate from a PhD and you apply for that graduate route visa, you can remain in the UK for up to 3 years. Some of the conditions associated with that graduate route visa, you can work in any field, so you can work on that graduate route visa. There's no minimum salary threshold that you need to achieve, so it's really flexible. You can work part-time if you want to, you can work full-time, or you don't have to work at all. But if you know that you're going to want to remain in the UK after that 2 or 3 year period, it's really a good idea to start working so you can build up your salary. Because if you apply for that skilled worker visa thereafter, there is a minimum salary threshold that you do need to meet. Our qualifications are globally recognised as well. So I'll talk about the length of time you would spend on those degrees, that being much shorter than their US counterparts. However, although they're shorter in length than their US equivalents, that's not to say that they're not worth as much. They are globally recognised. So a master's degree from the UK, even though it is 1 year in length, is worth just as much as its 2 year equivalent in the US. And there's lots of careers and entrepreneurship support given to you in UK universities as well. So each university will have a dedicated careers support service, and they can assist with helping you build a new company if you want to. And any intellectual property that you develop throughout your time at the university is your own. You own that intellectual property. So although as universities we would want to boast about the achievements you've made, we would not be taking credit for that research as well. It is very much your own, developing that research in the UK. And it's a fantastic student experience as well. So we do have challenging degrees. You will be admitted to the university in the UK on the basis of academic merit. That's not to say that you would spend your whole time and your whole life in labs and lectures and studying. There will still be the opportunity to get involved in extracurricular opportunities throughout your time. Okay. And UK universities generally are very diverse campuses, particularly so at the postgraduate level at many universities, particularly Russell Group universities. There are often more international students at the postgraduate level than there are home students. Just to give Cambridge as an example, 60% of our postgraduate students are from outside of the UK, representing over 40 different nationalities. And there's a variety of teaching methods in the UK at the postgraduate level too. So there will be those lectures, seminars, workshops, and tutorials, particularly if you're doing a taught master's degree. However, if you want to focus on your own individual research, you can spend the majority of your time doing your own independent research, potentially with a few classes involved as well. There's a lot of outside classroom experiences too, like field trips. There might be an option to do study abroad, research opportunities if you're focusing on that taught-led degree, and also internships as well. So each university, in addition to their dedicated careers service, will have an online jobs board that you can apply to and support to you to apply to those as well. Then each university, there's also a student union, and they organise hundreds of clubs and societies in sport, culture, music, technology, academic focused groups and volunteering as well. And they're really good things to get involved in, particularly to enhance your CV or resume. You'll have a lot of academic and departmental support within your academic department too. So you'll generally have a tutor within your department. And there's dedicated international support for students coming into the UK to assist with visas and the transition to the university as well. Each university will also have a counselling, mental health and wellbeing services too to support you in your transition to the university. So this is what the trajectory would look like if you were to do your bachelor's degree in the UK right the way through to your PhD. So bachelor's degrees, as standard, are 3 years in length in England. If you were to do an integrated master's or have a study abroad year or industrial placement for a full academic year, it would be a 4-year bachelor's degree. However, as standard, 3 years, and we guarantee completion in 3 years if that's the structure of the degree. You then move on to a master's degree, and typically they are 1 year in length. And then you can move on to a PhD, which would typically be 3 to 4 years in length. So to compare those to their US equivalent, a lot less time would be spent. So in the space of 4 years, you can have both your master's degree and PhD. And then I'll hand over to Alyce to talk about time and money.
Okay, hi everyone, I'm Alyce with Durham University, and I'll be walking you through the presentation before Thomas then gets in for admission. So time and money, just like Nathan just went over, our master's degrees are only 1 year full time. And like you said, that's not to say that they're not fully accredited. I think it actually brings a lot of great conversation when applying to different job opportunities. Everyone thinks it's interesting, especially some of the research focus and dissertation areas that students will choose within their master's program. So it is a very, very high quality of education. So like we said, it's only 1 year, but it's still just as accredited as a 2-year program with masters here in the United States. It is a full year. Usually programs will start in September, October. Usually final exams will be maybe June time, and then summertime is usually dedicated to dissertation work. So you will be on campus throughout the summer. PhDs are 3 to 4 years full time, and these are a little bit different. Students usually ask, why are they shorter than PhD programs in the States, which can take you sometimes even 5 to 6 years to complete. It's typically because there is no classroom components to this PhD. So it's really research focused and based. You'll have a supervisor that you'll connect with periodically to make sure you're keeping up with your research and making sure that you're not having any issues or need to do something a little bit differently, but it really is independent. So students that have a great research background or even want to do a 1 year, maybe master's by research or master of philosophy, just more research-based programs usually do really well within a PhD program. For the 1 year masters, it's very timely completion with required classes. You'll have like a set amount of core and optional modules that you'll need to take throughout the year-long program. Most of the modules will be core, right? It's only 1 year, so you're kind of set in like a base classroom area and what the different top modules will be. But you might have a few optional modules that you might be able to pick from just out of a set requirement for classes. But usually it will be within the department. You can't really do optional modules within a few different departments of just interest to you, kind of just to add it on. It'll usually be if you're doing an English studies program within the English studies department, if you're doing history within history, and so on and so forth. It is lower tuition fees. We have an example of that on the next slide, but usually if tuition fees here in the States, it's usually a per year cost that you'll see, and that's a 2-year program. Ours only 1 year, so the tuition fees that we usually post online are what they're going to be for the full year to complete your program. and shorter completion times and cost of living. So I know all of our campuses are outside of London, so they are going to be naturally cheaper to live in as far as renting an apartment or even living in student accommodations. And also just getting around the city or the campus, like public transportation, going out to eat and dining out and going to restaurants and going to shows and performances are usually going to be pretty affordable and much cheaper than if you're in a larger city like London. So just keep that in mind too. Okay, so here's an example of some of the tuition fees. We kind of did an average out here, and these are numbers that you can look up on the British Council website too, to kind of see what monthly costs would be for different things within your life living in the UK. But it's around 2,200 a month in London and around 1,600 for the rest of the UK. And we say rest of the UK, obviously there's varying, maybe medium to large size cities and maybe some smaller cities can slightly vary, but I mean, just as a general rule of thumb, London is going to be a little bit more expensive than the rest of the UK. But for cost of attendance, and so these are going to be world ranked programs in the top 10 or to 750. For undergraduate programs, you can kind of see the costs here. Undergraduate programs, as Nathan mentioned, are usually only 3 years full time. And so, I mean, comparing private schools to public universities, sometimes you can actually be spending some money or saving some money within your program. For a 3-year bachelor's degree, it'll be usually between 110 to 25. For integrated masters, if students are doing undergraduate degree and then adding on a 1-year master's to their program, that'll be the full cost. But as you guys are undergraduate students and just looking to maybe do a 1-year top master's, it usually ranges between 48,000 to 80,000. And I will say these costs, those are not usually only tuition rates. That can be tuition rates and among student housing, meal costs throughout your program, just what it costs to live there for the full year. So it does range. Usually the cheaper programs or cheaper tuition rate programs are going to be more humanities, liberal arts based. And then more of the STEM based, lab based programs are just, they cost more to run the program. So they'll be a little bit more expensive, but we all have costs for the program on our websites. It's not a hidden fee. So you can actually go and look up exactly what these different programs cost on our websites. We do accept the FAFSA for many of our programs, and most universities do. I think there's maybe only 10 that really don't accept the FAFSA in the UK. So you can apply for an unsubsidized loan for graduate studies. It's the same as you would apply here in the States for a graduate program and for one US university, but you can actually take that abroad with you. So I have a few students this year that are doing an unsubsidized loan and using that to fund their graduate school studies. And you can also look at different guides and different search engines. There's the alternative guide to postgraduate funding, which has a few, I think, university partners, and you can maybe pay a small fee to look at different grants and different scholarships and funding schemes at different universities to look at. Just a search engine to start with. But there are, different outside scholarships too that you can bring from the US to the UK. I know we were talking to someone at St. Edward's a little while ago about doing the Rotary Club scholarships, and it's a smaller pool of funding for Boston students if they want to apply for those outside scholarship funding. And also there's just a few other funding schemes you can find on our websites. That leads me to institutional and external funding options. So institutional, I mean, we all have our North America pages, even United States pages that you can look into. You have to do some digging and maybe like parse that and say, oh, okay, these are the universities that I would like to attend. But usually there are some funding for either departmental funding, merit-based funding occasionally. So we'll usually have some scholarship funding for master's programs. And like I said, external options as well. Okay, selecting the right universities, some search engines that you can look into. British Council is great. That's some of the numbers that you can say for like cost of living and also just searching for different graduate programs in different areas of the UK too that you're interested in. And there's also a scholarship search engine here too that you can look into. So British Council is a great place to start. The REF and TEF, if you want to look at different ranking systems, REF is the Research Excellence Framework. This is what UK public universities use each year for just different funding schemes and, how it's allocated. Research at, top universities needs to be unique and looked after. And I think they're allocating about £2 billion of funding to universities. So they really need to keep up with that research to make sure they get a certain amount of funding for humanities programs, STEM programs, and so on and so forth. Teaching excellence framework. This is going to be kind of a student framework, but also an independent academics review. It's just kind of getting down to the root of what are we learning? What are the outcomes? And is the teaching really wonderful at this particular institution? I like the teaching excellence framework just because there's student input. And then there's different rankings that universities will receive. So there's the gold, silver, and bronze. Obviously, gold is outstanding, like the teaching is above and beyond at that institution. Silver, it's still, just over, it leads for the teaching excellence in that area. Bronze, it's kind of like the standard, okay, it meets the standards of teaching excellence, and then sometimes it'll say even needs improvement for that institution. But again, there's an independent educational partners and students that review for the teaching excellence framework. Different ranking systems. If you want to look at UK ranking systems, I recommend the Guardian University Guide, the Complete University Guide, and then the Times and Sunday Times Higher Education Guide. So those are all going to be UK ranking systems. They use their own criteria points and, kind of what they weigh more than others, if it's research on campus, if it's different funding schemes and whatnot. So there's a few different criteria points that students can look at here. So I say, in the States, we kind of rank institutions against one another and we kind of forget, oh, all right, what's out there and what's the different ranking system. So if you want certain criteria points and seeing what's important to you, to look at the Guardian, Complete, and then Times and Sunday Times. There's also Discover Uni, which has been one of our new kind of overall favorite search engine systems that you can use here. It goes really into depth about, what salary the students can make after they graduate and what percentage of students are using what they learned in the classroom in their jobs, and also what types of jobs students are getting, like if they're in the tech industry or if they're doing business management, so on and so forth. So it just gives you kind of like a nice in-depth overview of your program and what you'd be studying at that institution. For course content, modules, a course is a module or a class is a module. That's just the kind of the interchangeable word here that we use in the US and the UK. If you want to look up just syllabi or a syllabus for a certain program at a university, they're usually available online and you can either look them up, or if you're having trouble finding them, if you reach out to the contact for North America at your university, they can send it over to you. So you can actually, click on the modules. It'll tell you learning assessments, what the final exam might look like, if it's an exam, if it's a project, if it's a presentation, so on and so forth. And you can actually see what the learning outcomes might be within that particular program. You also want to take into consideration the location of your university. Is it in Scotland? Is it in England? Is it in Wales? Is it in a larger city or a smaller city, like the size here, if that's something you see yourself in, and also Russell Group institutions. So if you want to be a part of what we call an elite university group, it's called the Russell Group. It's a group of just plenty of universities within the UK, and they receive about 70% of the government funding for research programs and projects, and it's 24 research-intensive universities. All of us, Cambridge, Newcastle, and Durham, are part of the Russell Group. Also post-92 universities, those are one of the newer universities, the more modern universities that students can look into. Just to putting more. Yes, right universities you can look into and what you might use for search engines and whatnot. And for graduate accommodation, actually plenty of universities will offer master's and PhD students university housing. And the type of housing really depends on the university. Sometimes it might be university halls, residence halls, and sometimes it might be like apartment style housing, which is maybe separate from the university, but still kind of vetted by the university. But some, you have to ask them and look into it, but they will usually offer graduate accommodation. Look into the private sector, halls sometimes provided by third-party providers. It's called intentionally built student housing, I believe. So it's like a partner, sector or type of housing that the university vets beforehand that students can look into. So yes, every university will have something different, but you can look on the websites to verify what exactly the type of accommodation is. All right, and I'll hand it over to Thomas with Newcastle to finish us off.
Hey, hi, everybody. So importantly, how do you get into universities in the UK? So first of all, just to give you an idea of the different programs that are available, you may find there's a lot more choice out there in terms of the number of programs and also the way that they're described. So the different types of masters that are available. Most universities in the UK, and speaking for the three of us here, will probably have over 200 different masters programs available. And you'll see different terminology around MA, MSc, MRes, MPhil, MPH, you might have MMus, MFA. There's so many different ones out there. Ultimately, they're all master's qualifications, and I found out today that the way that they're used, even the same title, can be used quite differently between two different universities. Generally speaking, an MA and MSc, these are your traditional one-year taught programs where you're classroom-based and you're doing 2 semesters of classroom-based learning and then a semester of research. But those types of programs don't exist at Cambridge. Their standard program would be an MPhil, which at other universities tends to be a purely research-based masters. So you will need to have a little bit of a dig around as to see which ones are which, depending on the universities that you're applying to. And Res at Newcastle and lots of universities are a kind of a blend between a research and a talk program. So you have a semester of talk-based learning and then 2 semesters of research. But at Cambridge, they're not that. So yeah, it does cause a little bit of confusion, but ultimately they're all masters programs. And you can do a little bit of when you look on a program page, you'll be able to see quite like clearly how they're broken down, how much of your time is spent doing research versus how much of your time is based in classroom. But all master's programs in the UK will have an element of research in them. Even if they're predominantly classroom based, you'll still do some sort of research that's normally worth about a third of your overall mark. To get onto the programs, predominantly the requirement is going to be first of all your GPA. So the minimum generally you're going to be needing is a 3.0, but some universities or some programs will need higher, potentially going up to 3.6 or maybe even higher than that, but most will be in that 3.0 to 3.6 range. You will then need to write a statement of purpose. That basically is why you are the right person for this program. Why do you want to do this program? And particularly this, like the actual program you're applying to, not just generally like, why do you want to do a master's in international relations, like why international relations at X university, and then what you're wanting to go on to do afterwards with that degree. Where do you see it taking you, either more research or into a specific career or field of work? Normally you'll need to provide at least 1, if not 2 academic references. Sometimes they can be uploaded as a pre-written reference, or you just leave just give contact details for the university and they'll contact your referee themselves. And then this is a big difference between the UK and the US, is that generally speaking, we don't require GRE or GMAT scores for the vast majority of programs at most universities. Some programs will, but on the whole, you won't be required to take the GRE or the GMAT. And then you might find additional requirements for some specific programs. So it may be that, for example, you're applying to a finance program that requires you to have studied certain financial mathematics in your undergraduate degree. You may need to have work experience for some programs. So there may be some additional requirements on top. The most common additional requirement is that not only do you have to have a bachelor degree with a certain GPA, but that you have to have a specific major as well in order to apply for that program. But do read carefully the entry requirements, because that will list exactly what's required for you to apply for that program. Most universities work on a rolling admissions basis, so applications will open some point in the summer and they will accept applications right through till the following summer. So you could even apply as late as August for a program that starts in September. Some universities will have rounds of admissions where they collate all of the applications in that round, and then they'll judge them all together at the same time. And others will have deadlines either at the end of the year or earlier, depending on the program. And universities will also operate different models for different programs as well. So there isn't a one size fits all model essentially for deadlines. So you are going to need to look at the actual program that you're wanting to apply to, rather than just the university on the whole. And I know at Newcastle, for example, we generally do rolling admissions, but some programs do have application deadlines that can be as early as February, for example. So it's important to understand, exactly what the program you're looking for, when the application deadline might be. And then PhDs, these are very complicated. Admissions for these is really quite different depending on the exact program that you're applying to. So normally you'll need a master's to get onto a PhD, but not necessarily. Some universities will have a combined master's PhD program where you actually apply for both at the same time, straight out of your bachelor's degree. But generally speaking, they will have a master's admissions requirement. So you need to do your master's first and then apply for the PhD. Some have a speculative application, and others will work on an advertised position. Normally that's more scientific based ones where there's sort of ongoing research that's happening and you're applying to be part of that ongoing research project. Humanities generally are more on the speculative side, where you're proposing to do your own research independently and you're not forming a part of a larger project. It's important to really do your homework around the admissions process for PhDs. You need to identify the right person, the right research group within a university. Some programs require you to contact a supervisor in advance and get their support for your application. Other programs will require you to apply and then they will match you with a researcher. And the research proposal itself is a big part of the application. Generally speaking, it's going to be sort of 2,000-3,000 words for a research proposal for a PhD, and that's just to apply for the program. So it's a lot of work to do, it's not something you can sort of just do on a whim. Basically, it's not like applying for a standard master's program where an application might only take a few hours of work to put it together. A PhD application is going to take a long time. As I said, there are quite big differences between science and humanities-based PhD, so important to understand the differences in those. And then when it comes to funding and scholarships, it's often very much specific to that PhD or that research. It could be that there's research bodies that are external to the university that are funding programs. It could be the university itself has some. It's very rare that you will find like a central scholarship pot for a PhD. So again, more work to do in order to be able to find that information out. What you will find generally is PhDs have sort of different start dates throughout the year. It's often not a case that you're applying for one start date in say September, and they'll normally have 3, maybe 4 different start dates throughout the year. So it doesn't mean that if you miss a September start date, you have to wait for the whole year in order to apply again. Okay, that's everything from us on the general side. Before we talk about our individual universities, does anyone have any questions online here in the room? Yeah,
I can go ahead and kick off questions. So I remember throwing this question to you before when you were here last time, but I wanted to ask this, besides the databases y'all have provided in terms of actually being able to see what these universities can provide in terms of education and even salary, are there any good scholarship databases for prospective students to look at and kind of see any funding opportunities before they jump into a specific university, specifically, let's say, third-party scholarships?
that's right. There's a website called Find for Masters, and I find a masters.com is quite good. And Masters Portal, I think, there's another one. Yeah. But specifically for scholarships, no, I'm not certain.
There's a lot of different websites that suit. I mean, if they just Google master's funding, hey, like it'll come up with a few different search engines maybe that other people or students have compiled, but I don't think there's like one central area to look them up. Yeah, there's a few places that if they're having trouble, they can reach out to one or some of us. We'll know like where some of our scholarships are located, or maybe where some other of our students have had success in the past. Like that's what I can.
Research Council funding is, Research Council's a good place to look for third-party funding. But then the source that Alyce mentioned, the Alternative Guide to Postgraduate Funding, is a really good search engine for little pots of money, the more sort of unique pots of money that went for years and years and years without being touched because the criteria was so niche, or didn't have their own website, or you needed to live in the, I don't know, you needed to live in Austin for 3.5 years and you needed to have, I don't know,
Yeah.
Nissan car, for example. It's that kind of thing.
Left foot on the ground. Like,
But that's a really good place. You can put your own criteria into that and it will come up with what's available to you. But then the bigger scholarships, individual universities tend to have pages for those, like Cambridge has a page for, I don't want to say obvious, but more generous third-party scholarships to look at. So there's a few different places to look, and then individual universities have their own scholarship listings too.
We haven't mentioned, but there's obviously the Fulbright, the Marshall. Students not from the US, the Chevening scholarships are a big scholarship provider. And so, international students who here at UT Austin may be eligible for a Chevening scholarship. As long as they're not US, I think the US is the only country that's excluded because they have the Fulbright and the Marshall awards. I think every other country in the world is part of the Chevening program. Yeah, and that's again, full scholarship with expenses included and flights and things like that. So, those are the 3 really big ones: Fulbright and Marshall for American citizens, and then Chevening for anyone who's not a US citizen.
Amazing. Thank y'all so much.
Online. Back to Alyce then.
yeah, there are no questions online so far.
Back again. Okay. I'll be talking a little bit more about Durham University. So Durham is located up in the northeast. It's about an hour and 45 minutes by train from Edinburgh. So we're very close to the Scottish border, and about 3 hours from London on the train. But as Nathan mentioned earlier, the UK is very easy to get around with the public transportation system. So nothing is too far. And I especially tell that to my Texas students. I mean, 3 hours is like driving from Austin to Dallas. So really not that too much of time consuming there. But Durham University was established in 1832, and we're actually the third oldest university in England, apart from Oxford and Cambridge. We are ranked 89th in the world with the QS ranking system. This is a world ranking system that has a lot of different criteria points that you can look into. So you can look at US schools and how they're ranked against UK schools and how they're ranked against schools in China as an example. So it's really great. They rank about 1,500 elite universities worldwide. So just to give you an example as a US institution comparison, we are ranked just above Boston University and just below Brown University. So almost to the Ivy Leagues. And we're ranked 5th overall in the UK with the Times and Sunday Times. Our rankings slightly differ with the Complete and Guardian University guides as well. Again, those are all the 3 UK ranking systems that I mentioned earlier. I think they vary from like 5th to 7th overall. But again, you can go and look on these websites and see which criteria points are most important to you and look at all their different rankings that they use. We have a UNESCO World Heritage Site in Durham, which includes our cathedral and castle in the city. The castle dates back to the year, I believe it was 1072 is when it began construction, and the cathedral in 1093. They both took about 100 years to complete, but very historic sites, and people come from all over the UK and the world to come and see them. Big tourist destination. The cathedral is massive. And actually the castle is owned and operated by Durham University, and it is one of our student residence halls. It's one of our colleges. So students actually have the opportunity to live in the castle if they want to. And we have 150 bedrooms for postgraduate students, particularly in the castle. If you want to look at other residence halls, though, we have 16 other colleges, 17 total. And we do guarantee housing for all of our international postgraduate students. You'll be what's called a college, which is a little bit different from what we think of colleges here in the States, where it's usually like College of Education or College of Sciences or College of Engineering. At Durham, they won't be, they're not very similar to what you're studying. It's a big mix of students all over the campus in different areas of study and different nationalities. So it's a big social aspect of the university. But our colleges are more than just a place where you sleep. They're basically your whole social aspect. So they have little common room areas where you can hang out and study with your friends. They have bars that you can go to. They have different dining halls that you can do and have the gowned formal dinners, like very Harry Potter-esque in a way. But a lot of the colleges will even have their own tennis courts, sometimes their own boat houses, sometimes theater rooms, music spaces. So they're very much all inclusive. And again, where a lot of that social aspect comes into. So a lot of international students will make their friends through the collegiate system that we have. We have about 20,000 students on campus, about 4,500 postgrads, but we do have a huge international population. So we quite literally have students from all over the world coming to study at Durham. You can see our top 50 world ranked programs. So we have archaeology, classics, theology, geography, anthropology, English, philosophy, history, earth sciences, and law. So a lot in the humanities and social sciences. But even we have great STEM programs, research-based programs. And you can see here I've written that most of our 130 master's degrees across our 27 different departments rank within the top 10 in the UK. So no matter what you're studying, it's going to be a very high quality. And just for more social aspects of the university, we are ranked top 5 in the UK for team sport. We have 18 competitive sports leagues and also over 700 intramural sports teams run through our colleges. So you can join any type of sports league that you would like. We also have a great sports scholarship program for postgraduate students. We have 27 theater companies, all student run, and we usually have performances at Edinburgh Fringe Festival and over 80 music societies, and any students can join. They don't have to be music students. So you can try your hand at some piano. And obviously, if you don't want to be a music student, you can go and see some performances between theater and music. There's something happening pretty much every day, every week. So lots of different theater and music spaces available. But that's a little bit about Durham. I'll pass it on to Newcastle.
Okay, so moving just 15-20 minutes back up north, you'll find yourself in Newcastle. A very different experience though to Durham, much bigger city. and very different campus feel once you're actually on the campus. So although we were actually born out of Durham University, so we were established in 1834 as Durham's College of Medicine, and then the two universities separated in the 1960s. So we, on paper, are not that old as a university, but we actually have history going back to the 1830s. We have about 28,000 students across all of our undergraduate, postgraduate, and PhD programs. We are a city centre campus is the best way to describe us. So we have both the convenience of being located in the centre of the city, but at the same time, we have very much a campus feel when you're on campus, which is really nice. So you're not constantly surrounded by traffic and busyness. You're not having to, walk 20 minutes from one side of the city to the other in order to be able to go between your classes. You have the convenience of having everything in one place, but then also being just across one road in the downtown area of the city. Newcastle is consistently named one of the best student cities in the UK. It's in the top 40 best student cities in the world, and in this year was named as having the best student life of any UK city. So it's a great place to study. Lots of things are going on, both on and off campus. Great shopping, music, venues, nightlife, scenery. We're only about 20 minutes away from the coast. We have one of only 4 metro systems in the UK, so really easy to get around. You're only 20 minutes from the campus to the international airport that's just outside the city centre as well. So, for being able to go away on weekends and travel to places in Europe and things like that, it's very, very convenient. Newcastle as a university is ranked 129th in the world, so just ahead of UC Davis, and the next closest American university is Rice in Houston. But we have about 14 individual subject areas or programs that are in the world top 100 in the US rankings. We currently have about 200 master's programs available across our 3 faculties. So that's our Humanities and Social Sciences faculty, which does also include our business school. We then have a Faculty of Science, Agriculture and Engineering, and we also have our Medical Sciences faculty as well. Our research strengths are currently the focus is in these 5 areas. So we have aging and health, so helping people build healthier, happier, longer lives. We have cities in place, which is looking at building sustainable communities for the future. Culture and creative arts, so challenging historical perspective and enriching the future. And then One Planet, which essentially is environmental science, so that's working to ensure there is enough for all forever. And then finally data, so unlocking the power of data to discover the solutions and drive innovation. So just to give you an example of what that actually means in terms of student experience, that building you can see there in the bottom left, that's actually home to the 2 UK National Innovation Centres for Ageing and for Data as well. So because of our research areas in those 2 areas, in ageing and data, we are host to those 2 National Innovation Centres. We are also ranked top 20 in the UK for employer reputation, and we've also got some really entrepreneurial graduates supported by our great career service. So we are ranked top 4th in the UK for the turnover of the graduate and student run businesses, and we're also top 10 in the UK in terms of the number of graduates listed on the Forbes 30 under 30 list in the UK as well. And then outside of that, we have about 200 student societies, so lots of things for students to do outside of their studies. We don't have the collegiate system that Durham and Cambridge have, but we do still have, those options to be able to get involved in and things outside of your studies in order to create friends and get to know people that way. We also are ranked in the top 10 in the UK and have been for about 7 years for sports as well. So we are a host to a number of high-performing athletes, and we have a number of teams that take part in sort of high-level sports across the UK. That's everything from me. I will hand over to Nathan to finish that up.
Thank you, Thomas. Okay, so the University of Cambridge is the world's 4th oldest university. Cambridge was established right the way back in 1209, so it has over 800 years of history and tradition to go along with that. Because of the reputation of the university, it's a very highly ranked university, and it has an 800-year reputation to attract nationally and internationally renowned experts in their field. So coming to the University of Cambridge as a student, you will work with those experts who are leading the way at the cutting edge of their field. And Cambridge researchers have made and do continue to make world-changing discoveries. In vitro fertilization was developed by scientists at the University of Cambridge. The webcam CRISPR-Cas9 was invented there, and the structure of DNA was discovered by Sir Francis Crick and James Watson at the Cavendish Laboratory, which has recently moved into a £300 million new centre for physics at Cambridge. And that cost, as I mentioned, it cost over £300 million and is named the Ray Dolby Centre, named after one of our alumni, Ray Dolby, who is the founder of Dolby Sound. We also have some incredible alumni in other areas that I'll go into in a few seconds. But our scientists also go on to do incredible discoveries, not only historic discoveries, but last month alone, scientists found the strongest evidence yet for life on a distant planet. We're consistently ranked top 5 in the world and #1 in the UK of the university. And 125 Nobel Prize winners have come from affiliates of the University of Cambridge. So our scientists, our researchers go on to be recognised for the discoveries that they're making. And if Cambridge were its own country, it would rank 3rd in the world for the number of Nobel Prize winners after the United States and the United Kingdom. Cambridge, like Durham, is a collegiate university, so there's a lot of benefits that come along with that. Alyce has really well covered it beforehand. But there's a lot of student support within each of our colleges. We have 31 colleges, 29 are exclusively, 2 of them are exclusively for postgraduate students, 29 of them are mixed undergraduate and postgraduate communities of students. We guarantee accommodation at the undergraduate level, but if you want to live in your college at the postgraduate level, that is available to you as well. And there are really exceptional academic support and facilities at the University of Cambridge. There's 12 museums across the city itself, but 9 of them are owned by the university. And they have some incredible exhibits and artifacts within them. For example, the transcripts and archives of Sir Isaac Newton and Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin's microscope is in one of them. We have original pieces by Claude Monet and Rembrandt. The University Library is one of only 6 legal deposit libraries in the UK. So that means that the library is legally entitled to every single textbook and text generally that is published in the UK every year. So it's almost impossible to find a text online and it then not be available to you in the library itself. There's over 8 million texts within the university library spread across 2,000 different languages, but each of the individual departments and colleges have their own library to support students at the university as well. And Cambridge is not only a very historic city, it's also one of the world's leading technology hotspots. There's over 3,000 tech firms based in Cambridge, and they turn over £21 billion per year. The tech industry in Cambridge has been valued at over $191 billion. So big international firms like Microsoft, AstraZeneca, Toshiba and Amazon have based their European research and development centres in Cambridge. And as a university, we have very strong connections to those businesses. And it really will be an outstanding international student experience. We have over 300 postgraduate programs spread across 6 different schools, and around 60% of our students at the postgraduate level are from outside of the UK, representing over 140 different nationalities. Student experience generally is absolutely outstanding too. And we have over 500 clubs and societies, over 180 music and theatre productions and opportunities per year. And although we don't have a performing arts theatre programme on the academic side of things, you really can flourish in that field as a student at Cambridge. And a lot of our students have gone on to win BAFTAs and Oscars. Emma Thompson, Hugh Laurie, Stephen Fry, just as a few examples. And that's odd. We are ranked 5th in the world for employer reputation. So international employers really do understand the value of a Cambridge degree, and our alumni are in very high demand. We have a dedicated careers service, and it's a lifelong membership to that service. So if you want to come back and change career in 10, 15, 20 years time, the career service can help you with that. We also advertise over 1,700 internship opportunities to Cambridge students per year. There's also 200 on-site careers and enterprise fairs. So employers come to Cambridge to speak to our students, so they will come to you. And we have something called GradLink as well. So that matches Cambridge alumni with current students. So you can talk to Cambridge alumni about their experience in industry too. Just to end on some funding, as there was a question around that as well. We have over 500 scholarships at the postgraduate level at Cambridge. We have a central database, so you can look at that. But two main ones that I would like to highlight would be Gates Cambridge and the Churchill Scholarship, both of which are basically Fulbright scholarships. So they cover the full cost of tuition. They provide a stipend. Last year, the Gates stipend was around £21,000, so exceeds the average cost of living in Cambridge by a few £1,000s. Covers the NHS surcharge, covers visa costs, and also covers airfares home and to Cambridge. So exceptionally generous scholarships to keep an eye out for. The deadline for those is mid-October, so earlier than the general application deadline. Okay, so I think we'll leave it there. I think we have a few minutes before the dreaded update.
Update takes place, exactly. So you have about 3 minutes if we have any questions from online. I don't think. Okay, I do have a quick question, just as you had mentioned the Churchill scholarship. I just this is the first time I'm hearing about that. Is that like the Fulbright or like the Marshall Fellow Scholarship? Is that a government scheme, or is that specifically through Cambridge?
It's specifically Cambridge.
It's specifically Cambridge,
Yeah,
okay.
So that was set up when Winston Churchill allowed a college to be
Named
in his name.
Sure.
And one of his requests was that a scholarship was funded so that US students could come to Cambridge at postgraduate level.
Is that specifically for US students, or is that
Yes.
open to all international?
That's a good question. I believe it's specifically US students.
Just out of curiosity, just something to pass along to our students, you know?
And
So unlike a Rhodes or other ones, it's this one, or not a Rhodes, Marshall or something, this is specifically for Cambridge.
That's right.
Understood.
And kind of to push the application process along for the parties present, when is the best application window for y'all? Because I remember talking with you last time that at least in scholarships, it's best to get something in before October, so you have the best opportunity to apply for as many scholarships as you can. For the other parties here, when would be the best window to throw in an application for the 2026 cycle?
Yeah, our applications don't open until October 1st, so they wouldn't be able to get it on any little scholarship funding before then. But yeah, we open up them officially October 1st. We do a rolling admission cycle throughout the year. Actually, our applications for this upcoming October are still open. They're going to be closing June 30th officially. But some of them, I think Nathan or Thomas had mentioned, like some of them have some specific deadlines, and they have, you know, certain points, like our MBA program or like one of our archaeology and conservation programs have those specific deadlines, but most of them are just on a rolling admission basis.
Sounds good. Awesome.
Most scholarships that, I mean, I say like try to get
The earliest.
applications in before January.
Before that's all,
Yeah.
before it's all used up.
Yeah.
Or you have 100 people applying for the same $100.
First one in the door.
Exactly.
Got it.
And similar, so ours open early in summer, but our first scholarship deadline for our scholarships is not until March. So you know, you've got a little bit of time in that window. External scholarships may have earlier deadlines though. So normally it's as early as you can get it in. I think it's the best,
just going to
best advice.
Do
Really.
your research, and as early as you can get it in.
Yeah, yeah.
Great. That's great.
Thank y'all so much.
And any further questions from our online guests before we all get, the computer kicks us all off?
I think we have.
Oh, I was gonna say, we have 59
1 minute.
seconds.
Go right now.
It hurt us. But,
Not now.
folks online, this is being recorded, so if you would like to view the recording, you can always email Center for European Studies office. Or if you happen to email one of the 3 representatives here, be in touch with them, they can let us know so that we can make it available to you. So thanks for taking time. Oh, and here's the information on the take a screenshot.
yeah.
You've
Go
got
quick.
30 seconds.
Go, go, go,
to
go, go.
take a screenshot. It's like Mission Impossible. This presentation will self-destruct. So, well, thank you, but thank all of you for
Thank you.
being here. And if you do have any information or like, you know, like I see some brochures and things, would I be able to have one for my office? Just because. And thanks everybody online. We're gonna end the session. So thank you and have a great day.
Do you need more books or just the one?
We can just have, I mean, if you have a couple more.